After almost 15 years of working with wildlife, 10 of which were here, Vietnam is no longer a faraway country across the ocean. This man has devoted his youth to rescuing and caring for thousands of wild animals and returning them to the wild.
Một người đồng hành và một người đồng nghiệp đáng tin cậy.
Cũng là người mà có thể truyền lửa, truyền những cái đam mê đối với động vật hoang dã cho chúng tôi.
For him, his tireless efforts to protect wildlife do not simply come from love.
Nghĩ là cái cách mà Harry nghĩ về hay là tương tác với động vật thì dựa trên cái sự tôn trọng.
Có Harry đến với trung tâm cứu hộ là một điều may mắn.
Over the years, Harry Browning has contributed to Vietnam's achievements in protecting wildlife and ending illegal hunting and trading of wildlife. He came to this country without a job, but stayed thanks to a predestined relationship.
Almost 10 years attached to Vietnam, bonded with the animals that he cared for, Harold Browning, or Harry, as his friend often calls him, has devoted 10 years, over a decade of his life, to help Vietnam end the illegal wildlife trade, as well as contributing to its recovery. And now let's meet this British wildlife expert in today's Talk Vietnam to learn more about his knowledge, skills, and experience with which he has helped Vietnam wholeheartedly for the past decade. So thank you so much, Harry, for coming over to Talk Vietnam today.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, the first question might be a little bit weird because I read an article online that you said you want to be out of job very soon. So what did you mean by that?
This is very true. I say this to everyone. My career aspiration is to be unemployed at the end of this. It is because of the field in which I work. Because I'm working in animal rescue and, as you mentioned, combating the illegal wildlife trade, the job is to be unemployed, because when you've rescued all the animal and fought the illegal wildlife trade and that is over, then there's no more animals to rescue.
Right.
Then I can be unemployed, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. There's so many pressures and it's such a complicated issue with so many different factors that it will take a long, long time.
And so I just hope that that future is going to happen for you really soon. And so what brought you to Vietnam in the first place? For
Vietnam, I was one of the rare ones where I was sent here. So in 2015, the NGO I was working for asked me to come here to build a bear sanctuary for Four Paws Viet. And so that was my original job here. I didn't know anything about Vietnam when I was sent here. I did very little research. And so, yeah, just came here and explored and found out things as they came about. It's one of the strange ones. So I've worked in a few countries before, and in those countries I've learned the language, learned the bird species, the tree species, and all of that. Vietnam being at the end, I thought I wouldn't be here that long, so I didn't learn for a very long time. And then after the first 3 years, I realized I'd be here for a very long time. So then I had to learn language, trees, birds. Yeah, and then I found a problem and an issue which I really believe in combating with people who also really believe in it. And I could bring value to their work. So because of that, I'm here to help them as long as they're here to fight the illegal wildlife trade.
Yeah. So would you say that it's the people or the cause or the environment here that keeps you stay here for such a long time?
It's a bit of all of them, I suppose. The environment is lovely. I mean, Vietnam is an amazing country, and so very happy to be here. But I need something to help society, I suppose, as a job.
So the first time you set foot here in Vietnam was about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
After 10 years, is there still anything that is overwhelming to you about Vietnam?
No, not overly. I'm very easyggoing, and nothing kind of knocks me off my kilter.
Yeah.
So before I was living in Vietnam, I was living in a shed on the side of a mountain where we had no electricity, no running water. And so I went from living on that shed to the middle of Hanoi, and nothing really overwhelmed me with that. There's some things like looking back on Vietnam, and this is the same for the rest of the world, historically where you're overwhelmed.
Yes.
So Vietnam 100 years ago would have been all rainforest, from top to bottom. The animal populations would have been huge and all of that. So all of those animal populations are a lot smaller, and they're on the downward. So one thing that is overwhelming to me is how that recovers with all the humans in the population. That is something that I think about a lot, and I do find that the challenges we face, both overwhelming but incredibly full of opportunity.
Yeah.
Growing up on his family farm in the English countryside, Harry developed a love for wildlife at a young age. His professional work with wildlife began in 2011 as rhino and unregulated care manager at Longley Safari Park, England. In 2014, Harry joined Four Paws, working in Kosovo and several other countries. He was sent to Vietnam in 2015, where he and his colleagues founded Four Paws Viet, going on to design and build the Ninh Bình Bear Conservation Center and participate in rescuing and caring for 46 bears, victims of illegal bear bile extraction and body part trading. In 2018, Harry became an animal welfare advisor for Animals Asia and has been working full-time at the Hà Nội Wildlife Rescue Center ever since.
We're in a very special environment that we're in. We're surrounded by animals. So if you could turn around and tell me what kind of animals are we having here?
What animals we've got here at the moment? So we've got the Asiatic black bears behind us.
Oh, wow.
They largely come from the illegal bile trade or some of it from the pet trade. Then macaque species here, they're the macaque that all the COVID vaccines were tested on. And the animal that people might be able to hear through our microphones is the gibbons in the background.
Gibbons.
So that's their territorial call they're doing at the moment.
So your whole life is surrounded by all these interesting animals and sound noises, and maybe that's life of a wildlife expert. Aside from, getting to know all of those, very interesting knowledge and facts, what do you do?
So my job, essentially, is when an animal is brought into captivity, it has a whole life and behavioural repertoire in the wild that it does. So whether it's feeding, moving, finding conspecifics, that kind of thing. So I have to design that whole life for them in a captive space. Obviously, they can't move as far as they normally would, so it's about creating opportunities for them still to get the exercise. So whether that be designing facilities, the husbandry, the daily routine of the animals, the diet, I help design all of that and advise on that. And then, with the releases as well, so bits of everything.
And so building cages, it's an integral part of your job.
Yeah.
And I guess to an untrained eye, all cages kind of look the same, but to a professional eyes like yours, it's very different.
Yeah.
And could you tell us the differences between each of the cages? What is the tiger cages? How is it different from, say, gibbons?
It depends on how they live their life in the wild and what they do. Monkeys, so like the macaques behind us, they have a vertical flight response. So if they get scared, they will go up. So what you want to do for all animals is give them control of their lives. So for an animal, if it gets scared, it needs somewhere to hide. It needs to not be hungry, so it needs to be fed. It needs to have access to water. So those are common things across the board, but then how the animals get them is where the changes are. So for macaque enclosures, they'll necessarily be higher. Also with macaque enclosures, they'll have a lot more visual barriers. Macaques maintain social contact or social hierarchies by eye contact. So we can look at each other and neither of us will fight. If we're monkeys and we look at each other, either you have to be below me or above me, and we have to sort that out by either dominance displays or physical violence. For them, you have visual barriers a lot more so that they can hide. So the one who's low ranked, he can hide at the bottom and not be seen from a top one. For tigers, you don't need that so much. But tigers hunt, so they feed by chasing objects and then grabbing it. So you need to make sure that a tiger has these kind of facilities inside. Also, tigers a lot more space.
Obviously, you interacted with animals a lot. Is there any behaviors that you find it something that only you could see that is interesting to you specifically, that the untrained eye cannot spot?
There's so many things like that. So with macaques, we've talked about their hierarchy before. How they maintain that hierarchy and what they do is incredibly interesting. And then the differences between different groups. With stump-tailed macaques, if we had a fight and I lost the fight, I would then have to put my hand in your mouth and you then have the power to either bite my hand or let me go. And so there's small things like that that are incredibly interesting to see. The hornbills we have here, the female will seal herself in the nest and lose all of her feathers when she's breeding, and the male will have to come and feed her all the time. The female will test males who is good at passing food to her, because she doesn't want a male who keeps dropping food, because when she's shut in the nest, if he keeps dropping food, she's starving to death. Like when the female's like, come on then, pass the food, and the male drops it, you see the woman looking at him like, oh. And it's a look I've seen on Vietnamese women looking at their husbands in Vietnam all the time as well. So yeah, you see interesting, I suppose that's an interesting behavior.
But I've also been told that you are very interested in supervising and observing tiger. What's so interesting about these big cats?
I am interested in tigers, mostly because we have so many of them, and the problem is very big. But I suppose my dream with tigers, I would love to to get tigers back in the wild in Vietnam. I think that is the dream, and that is why I spend so much time watching them, because the more I can learn about them at the moment, the easier it will be to release them. But the truth is that tigers are one of the more boring animals, because if you look after tigers properly, they'll eat 40 kilograms in one go, and then they'll just go to sleep for 3 days. I'm taking captive tigers and trying to teach them the skills to relearn in the wild, and it would take about 15 years to do it.
Wow.
But at the moment, there's no plans to put tigers back in the wild. But one day, I'll be prepared for when they are. Yeah, I'm watching them enough that I'll be prepared.
So what is the biggest challenge you have to face so far to pursue a career of being an animal wildlife expert?
The biggest challenge to pursuing a career, working with animals is just an incredibly hard job to get into. It's incredibly difficult, and the other thing about a lot of animal work is because it's a very desirable job, a lot of people think they want to work with animals. Therefore, the salaries are always very low. So the challenges are the low salaries and getting into the job. A lot of people take volunteers, but there's actually no gateway to then get into it.
Even though it's such a hard job, you know, what has sustained you so far? Because you, not only Vietnam, but you've traveled places. What's keeping you in this job?
So I've always wanted to help community, I suppose, and also I like challenges. So when I arrived here in 2015, they were receiving 1,500 animals a year.
Wow.
And I was asking, why are they doing that? And they're like, oh, we have to take that many animals because we're combating the illegal wildlife trade. I mean, this is a government rescue centre, and a lot of the work by government is so amazing. They deserve so much credit for it.
Although his initial expertise was in bear rescue and care, in his current role as animal welfare advisor, almost all the animals brought here are under his care. As before, at the Ninh Bình Bear Rescue Center, Harry plays an important role in designing and building suitable enclosure spaces for the animals. But Harry's workload is set to grow even greater soon, with the center about to expand from 1 hectare to 12 hectares.
Có Harry đến với trung tâm cứu hộ là một điều may mắn trong cái kế hoạch mở rộng 12 ha. Thì Harry cũng là nhà thiết kế chính. Cái thứ hai là Harry cũng đã giúp trung tâm trong cái việc là nâng cao phúc lợi cho động vật. Harry cũng là cái mối liên kết giữa các cái tổ chức phi chính phủ quan tâm về vấn đề bảo tồn động vật hoang dã của Việt Nam và các cái tổ chức, các cái trung tâm cứu hộ trong nước của Việt Nam.
With his long experiences caring for wildlife, Harry has helped many Vietnamese colleagues improve their professional qualifications wherever he has worked.
Thứ nhất là tôi thấy anh ấy là một người rất là tâm huyết, đam mê về động vật hoang dã. Và anh ấy mang lại cho chúng tôi một cái góc nhìn rất là sâu sắc hơn về động vật hoang dã. Không chỉ riêng với một loài, mà đối với Harry thì tôi thấy đấy là một cái kho tàng mà có thể bất kỳ một cái gì tôi hỏi Harry cũng có thể biết về rất nhiều loài động vật hoang dã. Và trong quá trình làm thì anh ấy cũng là người mà có thể truyền những cái đam mê đối với động vật hoang dã cho chúng tôi.
Và gần đây nhất thì tôi cũng đã phối hợp và làm việc cùng anh Harry là cải tạo cái chuồng Hoang, và tôi cảm thấy sự tự tin và khi làm việc với anh Harry, và qua đó là tôi cảm thấy đấy cũng là một cái cơ hội để có thể là một người đồng hành và một người đồng nghiệp đáng tin cậy.
In nearly 10 years working in Vietnam and the Hanoi Wildlife Rescue Center, Harry is estimated to have contributed to the rescue and care of 15,000 wild animals of various species. He is also a familiar face in most national parks and nature conservation centers across the country, supporting them with his expertise in wildlife rescue and release.
You ride your bike to work from Hanoi to Sóc Sơn every single day.
Yep.
And so is it a sign that you're already very married to your work?
Yeah, I'm incredibly married to my work. I think that's why I'm not married generally. I grew up on a farm, so I've done a lot of farm work and a lot of hard physical labor from a very young age, like 6 years old. So I'm just quite used to it. And if someone says, oh, you have to drive 30 kilometers to work every day, I'm just like, okay. If someone said I had to drive 100 kilometers to work, I'd just do that.
So is easygoing a perk when working as a wildlife expert?
It's a perk because when people give me loads of work, I'm just like, yeah, okay, I can do that, I can do that, I can get through that. But also you're confronted with a lot of hard situations. Everyone thinks animal rescue is quite a nice job. But there's a lot of animals that come in severely injured, or they've just had an awful time.
Right.
And so you have to understand the cruelty that has gone behind it, or sometimes the ignorance that has gone into it. So you have to be a bit easygoing in order to not let that stress and depression.
So what were some of the most exciting or happy moments that you have ever experienced at work?
I suppose my happiest moments at work is happiness kind of on other people's behalf. So we had to load up some bears here. We were moving bears from Sokson at Hanoi Wildlife Rescue Center to another NGO. The other NGO wanted to do lots of communication work about like me being the main person here. They came here and were expecting me to do things. And I said, no, 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 the staff here know how to do all of that. They'll do it all. And they were flawlessly perfect in front of the NGO. Everyone here loaded the bears perfectly according to protocol. The bears were non-stressed. They were incredibly happy about it. They loaded them all on the truck. Is a really joyful moment, I suppose. It's really happy. It shows it's kind of a vindication that the centre is always improving and we're doing really good work here. The other one that's quite easy for happiness is releases when you've done a lot of work on that animal release. So we did a hornbill release 2 years ago, and that took 4 years of coordination. And then finally, when we could release them, it was the work of 2 rescue centres, an international zoo, 4 years of my work, and so many advisors and administrators. And at the end of it, got to sit and watch the hornbills, which are now wild, and they've been seen again 8 months later, so they're still alive. So it's a real success story. So those are the happy moments.
What about the sadder ones?
Oh, sometimes a confiscation of a group of animals will come in. And with every animal that comes in, you know it took a day to poach it from the forest, and it will take us 6 months of work to get it back in the wild, if we can.
Yes.
And so when you get a large shipment of animals come in, it's so sad because that's all, it's not just that animal that's now not in the wild anymore, it's all its potential offspring, its partner. And if you get like a baby monkey come in, you know that there's a mother monkey somewhere who is now distraught because she has lost her baby. And so there's some of the sadness comes from that. Some of the sadness if there's just an animal that was unable to be released in the wild and you've now known it for many years.
Right.
And then if that animal passed away, it could be old age, it could be anything, but I suppose it's, in some ways it's sad not to have them there anymore, but also they never belonged here. So you have to remember that the animal never belonged to be in a cage.
Right.
So it passing away is not entirely a tragedy because it is now free, whereas it wasn't free before.
Yes. Do you have any successful story about wildlife releasing so far?
I suppose our hornbills is the biggest success when we saw those, because those we saw them again 8 months later and they were still surviving and they'd gone through the end of the summer into winter, back into summer, or the start of spring. So they'd survived the hardest part of the year and they were still together. So that's a real good success story for them still surviving and being around. Releases is always quite joyous. Everyone is incredibly happy because it's the end of the line. 200 pangolins come in years gone by in one day, and that's a lot of hard work. So it's memorable just in the work it was.
Yeah.
So when you're on releases, you have the staff come from here, but also some of the ministries who like oversee the centre will want to come as well.
Right.
So with woolly-necked storks, that is an animal where there is a conservation need in Vietnam for breeding woolly-necked storks and releasing them into the wild. And this centre is incredibly successful at doing it. And so we breed them, and every year we release woolly-necked storks in Cat Tien or Yok Don National Park. And that's just incredibly happy because it's just such a success.
Right. And is the releasing of the animals, what the atmosphere like? Is it always stressful? Do people clap?
We try and stop people clapping in case they scare the animal away. It's a little bit chaotic. A lot of people want to be the one to open and you want to help people and facilitate it. There is a small chance of disease risk in some of it, so you have to say. But you try and keep it as light-hearted as you can, and yeah, it's a nice atmosphere. I think the releasing animals at the moment is very interesting. You do get mixed results, and whether you're releasing loris at night and having to track them and find out how they survive, or you're tracking hornbills, which then might fly 100 kilometers away.
Wow.
You get a lot of interesting and different results. So with a lot of animals, the survival rate wouldn't be very high being released back into the wild.
Right.
Probably around 30% or lower. So you try and do as much as you can to get them ready to survive, but the interesting part is, yeah, if an animal doesn't survive, what went wrong? What do we need to do better? And a lot of it, nature is very hard to live in.
True.
So everyone thinks wolves live a long time. In America, the average age of a wolf is 4 years.
Wow.
That's as long as they live, because nature is so hard. So when you release an animal back into the wild, it might get killed within the first year, and everyone's like, that's not a very good release project. But the fact of the matter is, so many animals die after a year, the ones that grew up in the wild. So again, we need to better understand our relationship to nature and what our goals are for doing it.
With the contributions of Harry Browning and many other members over the years, the Hanoi Wildlife Rescue Center has become a beacon in terms of Vietnam's protection of wild animals. Caring for nearly 600 wild animals, including many rare species listed in the Vietnam Red Book, is of great significance in the overall strategy of preventing the extinction of Vietnam's endangered animals. Each year, the center cares for animals recovered from between 80 to 100 illegal trafficking crimes. In the first 9 months of 2024 alone, the center transferred 11 animals to Phong Nha Kẻ Bàng National Park. In total, it released 3 batches of 256 animals to national parks and nature reserves across the country. Harry Browning's dedication has contributed to HWRC's creative success during its nearly 3 decades of operation.
Now, speaking about the achievements that you and your team has been able to cultivate in, in the past decade or even more, how many animals are here?
How many animals are here?
Yeah.
We are on around about 600 at the moment. 41 tigers. It would be 21 bears. We've got about 30 monkeys at the moment, 5 gibbons. Where a lot of those animals come from is songbirds. Again, amazing work being done by Vietnam. We never saw songbirds until 4 years ago. And then turtles is another one we get a lot of, and snakes. So those would make up a huge proportion of it. Then we get a lot of small mammals. We've got civets and pangolins, a lot of larger birds, so an adjutant and great hornbills.
Wow. And do you have a priority of care to them? You know, when you bring an animal into captivity, they have a whole lifestyle repertoire that they have to adapt with. So is the purpose is to keep their wildlife instincts, or is the purpose is to adapt them to a new environment?
It's both of those. With a wild animal we're releasing again, we're not so much adapting it to a new environment because it'll be temporary.
Yes.
But as the third component is to maintain the behaviors that in the absence of them, there's a lot of stress. Animals, in the absence of natural behavior, they'll either develop boredom behaviors or self-damaging behaviors. So for bears, if they can't feed and forage all day and they get hungry or there's just nothing to do, you'll see they start swaying their head back and forward.
Okay.
Or some monkeys will start picking their fur out and injuring themselves. So it's partly to maintain the natural behavior, partly to stop boredom, prevent stress behaviors, and then, yeah, to help them adapt and acclimatize.
Well, obviously, for animals that are going to be released into the wild later on in life, it's going to be temporary for them. But about, the animals that have been kept here for a long time, what is the plan for them?
So, yeah, we've got a mixture of species. We have a mixture of different areas they're going for. So some of the ones are in captive breeding projects if a conservation need has been identified. So there's no point in us breeding tigers, because you can't release tigers anywhere. But for other animals like Oast civets and the hornbills, where their populations are in decline, we can breed them and then release the offspring out. The other ones that we have long term, so we have exotic animals that come from, we have animals from South America here, from North America. So for those ones, we can't release them, and it's about making a plan for what we do with them. If we had the space, for me, it wouldn't be a bad idea to use them for education purposes.
Not only here, but you're also in collaboration with other rescuing centers in Vietnam. Could you tell us about all of that connections that you have made throughout your time here?
So I worked in Hoang Lien, up in Sapa, Lao Cai. Hanoi, obviously. I was in Hai Dung, helping a pagoda out there that had monkeys and primates out there. Went to Cat Bar to look at release sites. Phong Nha Kẻ Bàng, we help the rescue centre there, and I have a staff member there, but I've been going down there to work with them for 5 years and doing animal releases. Puma, Cuc Phong National Park has got the turtles, EPRC, so I'm helping with the design of enclosures for EPRC at the moment. And then the bears down there, I set up that NGO, so I work with them quite a lot. And then going down the country, Vu Quang, I was in Vu Quang for 2 months last year, looking for somewhere that monkeys can be released that's not totally in the wild. So we looked at getting an island there. Yokdon, I've known them for years because we help with the Animals Asia I worked with before. We helped them with the elephant program down there, and then designing them rescue centers as well.
So with regards to how different all of these centers and how their priorities are, I guess the consistent through line between all of these centers are the human working on it and their dedication to their work. Is that right?
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah. And after 10 years of working here, can you tell us about the, this kind of like human resource development here after 10 years you work in Vietnam?
You get some differences within it. It just depends on the person and what they want to do. I mean, it's a really difficult, hard job. So some people don't want to do extra work for the animals. I totally understand that. If you've cleaned 41 tiger cages, you know how hard it is to do that. So those ones they're very good and they do their work, and it's hard, dangerous work. So they're very good. But what you also find is the other half are the people who have that job but want to be good at that job, really good at it. So those are the ones where they will ask you more questions. They'll always want to know more. You give them scientific papers, they'll come back with all their questions from those papers. And if I can help that effort, then I will stay with them for doing that. And they've all been lovely to me and kind to me while we do it. So I'll carry on for as long as they're taking that challenge and as long as I can help them.
Throughout all of those questions, I guess I want to ask, again, now that we have explored parts of, of your working here, what is keeping you here in Vietnam?
There's a problem that needs solving, I suppose.
Yeah.
So Vietnam has opportunities which Vietnam doesn't quite realize it has, it seems to me. So at the moment, Vietnam takes other people lead in conservation, and Vietnam is doing amazing work, but kind of following behind. Vietnam has an opportunity with a tropical climate. You still have animal populations here in the wild, which we don't have in England. In England, bears are extinct, beavers extinct, wolves extinct. You can go through the list.
Oh my God.
But they were extinct 2,000 years ago. Whereas in Vietnam, the reason there's so much people here talking about conservation is because you still have so many of your animals left. I mean, elephants are still here. I mean, rhinos and tigers gone, but bear species are being spotted on camera traps all the time. You've still got langurs, so many primate species. So Vietnam has a really chance to be a leader in conservation to the world and to say to the world, come to Vietnam if you want to see animals or want to know about them. What I would love to do next is start rebuilding new ecosystems. So areas where there has been a mine or something, that area is no longer useful. But what would be really interesting is regrowing it and then releasing animals onto that to see how they establish there, because you wouldn't need animals that necessarily survive in the wild. But you'd see new animal behaviors and way they survive and how they newly adapt to new ecosystems.
Right.
I think we'd learn a lot and it'd be very interesting.
Many people will be surprised to know that in addition to being a dedicated wildlife specialist, Harry is also a talented musician. He can play many different instruments such as the guitar, bass, piano, and drums. Harry has played in many underground bands during his years in Hanoi. He also has personal music projects that enrich the social life of the expat community living in Hanoi.
This band started because we both played in other big bands and we wanted to have just a small, simple project, just two people. It's challenging. He has a lot of crazy ideas, and my job is to try and achieve those ideas.
For Harry, music is a means to connect with people who share his passions outside of his professional work. It is also a way to restore his work-life balance and relieve the pressure of a stressful job. A talented musician, Harry has also earned a glowing reputation in the underground music scene.
You play music as a passion after work. So tell us more about this passion of yours.
Yeah, so it got slightly out of hand at the moment. So many years ago, I played guitar as bedroom guitarist in Vietnam, and then I saw a guitar pedal that I wanted to buy. So I went out and bought the guitar pedal, because I was a guitarist, and the guy was like, oh, I'm leaving Vietnam, so I don't need this bass. You keep the bass as well. So I was moving into a new house, so I took the bass in, and a housemate leant over the railway and was like, oh, you play bass, we need a bassist in our band. I was like, I don't. He was like, what's on your back? And I was like, it's a bass. And he was like, okay, you play it, you're in our band.
Oh, wow.
So then I was in a Latin band for a couple of years, and people saw me playing bass in that. So then they asked me to play bass in their bands, or I've since then started other bands. The reason I say it's got out of control is because at the moment I'm in 6 bands. Different instruments for them as well.
How do you find energy to fit everything in?
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people say this to me, and I've just never thought about it. Because I have other projects and things I do. I do the music side of it, the animal side, and there's other varying things I do. People always ask me about energy, but I've just never noticed that it required that much energy.
Wow.
At the moment, it's getting a bit taxing because, let's say, 6 bands. So at the moment, I have 5 band practices each week.
Wow.
So after work today, I then practice with puddles. After work on Tuesday, I have cello lessons. Wednesday, another band, and it just goes on and on all week.
Oh, wow.
So
I guess, like, do people know you as a wildlife expert and the people know you as a musician? Do those two world friendship group ever merges?
Everyone knows me, firstly, as a wildlife rescuer. So everyone knows me from that world because amongst the expat community, when they meet each other in a bar, they say, what do you do for a job? 99% are English teachers.
Yes.
So the one person that isn't, they go, oh, he works with bears. And so everyone knows you. So for ages when I was mostly working with a bear sanctuary here, when I met someone, I'd be like, hello, I'm Harry. And they'd be like, oh, you're Bear Harry. And I'd be like, what do you mean? And they're like, you work with bears. I'm like, okay, yes, I do. Therefore, I'm known for that and then music afterwards.
It came as a surprise to me as well to know that you also play music.
Yeah.
And you look the part as well.
Yeah, I know, especially at the moment. I'm waiting. So the vets do my hairdressing here. So my hair just gets long, and then the vets will just shave my head. So we're in between those. I'm going back to England soon for a holiday. So it's freezing there. So I'm keeping all my hair. I think it's warm for now.
Harry Browning's latest musical project is Kiều Band, a multi-ethnic group founded by musician Đỗ Kiên Cường. This project revolves around works inspired by Truyện Kiều, a classic Vietnamese literary work bonded to contemporary and experimental music.
For musicians like Harry and me, when we come into this kind of a setting, it's an honor to be playing music that is composed by a Vietnamese composer based in turn on the country's most famous poem. Harry is, you can see he's a very energetic person, brings a lot of energy, and you need that in music. So I think he's really the perfect guy to join this. And then again, I think he has the same feeling as me, where he's embracing that challenge of being in a Vietnamese setting.
Thế như vậy là nó là một cái ban nhạc rất là đa dạng, có nhiều thành viên, đặc biệt Harry chẳng hạn, thì là gần như là thỏa thuận nói là Harry cảm nhận và Harry chơi theo được một thứ âm thanh mà rất cần thiết trong một ban nhạc để âm thanh trầm. Harry feel và ngẫu hứng, thế và có những cái thì đánh đúng như là trong bản nhạc và có cái nó vượt xa khỏi bản nhạc, gọi là vượt xa khỏi cái trí tưởng tượng của Cường. Vì một cái năng lượng kỳ diệu nào đó của Truyện Kiều chẳng hạn, thì là đưa nhóm có những cơ hội biểu diễn.
Inspired by Truyện Kiều, the Kiều Band's music has been widely performed, including at well-attended cultural events. The band's unique blend of traditional Vietnamese and Western instrumental music excites the audience wherever they play. For Harry Browning, this musical project is an interesting contribution to Vietnam, spreading the traditional Vietnamese values to the public in a very creative way.
I don't know if people tell you this, but I guess the experience or the kind of energy that you're giving to a lot of people, you seem to be smiling a lot all the time, and you seem to be quite positive and happy. Do you have a definition of happiness on your own?
No, I don't really have a definition of happiness. I don't. My brother had a very good expression, which is he said he doesn't want the world to be a worse place because he existed in it. And I think that's a really good, mantra for life. Because you're not trying to make the world better and do all these grand things, just not making it worse. So I think if everyone did that, the world would naturally get better. So that's kind of a mantra thing that I do have. And then there's a few things to kind of keep yourself in check, isn't there? Have you ever heard the saying, comparison is the thief of joy?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, definitely. So things like that, it's very easy to get sad about things. You see other people have things, or you see other lives, and with social media and all that, it's very easy to see that. But that's not anyone's real life. And so with all of these things, it's just keeping yourself on a mental keel is getting harder to do, but I can do that. And I suppose, and I think having work that serves a community means that I'm part of something.
Yeah.
So I think just over time, working and helping communities just kept me naturally quite happy.
Yeah.
Part of it is also, I think it's linked to animals.
Yeah.
So as I said, with animals, they have brain processes that we need to adhere to, otherwise they get very sad. Humans are exactly the same. So I suppose why I might be happy is I can do the exercise, make sure I see enough people, play music and these things to keep me out of depression.
Now, you say that, you attribute it to a lot of, of the contributions and it's a team effort. But you yourself also got recognized as the Exemplary Good Deed Award
I did,
from Hanoi's People Committee. So how does it feel?
That was such an amazing honor. And the longer after it, because at the time it was a surprise and I wasn't really sure what it was, and it was explained to me during the process, and I was like, oh wow, this is a real high honor. But afterwards as well, the more I think about it, the more it is a real honor and just a pleasure to have. But it's not all, I was individually recognized, but it's not all my work, is it? Like, I can come here and give my expertise and dedicate my life to this, but if no one listened to me, I would just be a man yelling in a corner, wouldn't I? I definitely wouldn't have an award if I just sat on my own. So it's the fact that these people have listened to me and worked with me that anything has been achieved. And then for that to keep on going, and then for them to nominate me for an award for it is really amazing. But yeah. And also, there's just so many other, I mean, I sat in the award ceremony, and every person that goes up, like the fireman goes up, and you're just like, yeah, that is absolutely amazing. Dude, you're a fireman, you're saving lives. The ambulance workers go up, and that's amazing. Like, again, life can't survive without these people. But more proud than I was, I think it meant so much to my family. Because I worked really hard, and I've been here for 8 years when I haven't seen, I haven't seen my mum in 8 years, or I haven't seen my older brother in 8 years. My dad and younger brother visited me. So I haven't seen them for ages. So they're just like, oh, Harry's in another country, we don't really know what he does. But for them to hear that I was given an award by the government, they are unbelievably proud. And when I go back in a few days, that's what they're going to talk about when I get back there.
Yeah, I'm going to bring the plaque back?
I've got a medal with it as well. So I'll take the plaque and the medal back to show them and be like, yeah, this is what I got in Vietnam. And yeah, they can't believe it.
So looking back in that decade, what does Vietnam mean to you?
Well, I suppose it's the simplest thing in the world that Vietnam is my home. Like, Vietnam now is everything to me. I don't go back to my country. I know more about the situation of life here than I do about England now, because in those 8 years it's changed dramatically. So here is my home, and where I will probably, well, hopefully be forever if the situation allows. I know more people in Vietnam than I do in England.
Wow.
Yeah, I left England when I was 27, I suppose, 26. And then was in another country for 2 years. And then I've been in Vietnam for 10 years.
Wow.
I need to find what I want to do, at the moment I live in Hanoi, I want to find an area where I can live and have like a garden and all that stuff. Maybe I'll come out to Socks On one day and live here.
Yeah, and as the last question, do you have anything you want to share to the audience at VTV4?
Be present, I suppose, is my thing. A lot of stuff is happening around us, but there is so much beauty everywhere to see. Like, Hanoi has 200 bird species. I never knew that Hanoi was so diverse in its bird species. And you see them all over. So the only thing I'll say for VTV lookers is, if you think you're on your phone too much, just take time to look up and look around you. And also say hi to everyone you see them. They'll appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then we'll make a nicer place for everyone.
Right. So thank you so much, Harry, for allowing us to peer into your life. And we wish you the best of health and the best of luck so that you could carry on this very meaningful journey. And to our audience at home, I hope this conversation has been very meaningful and very passionate and inspiring for you. And just like Harry said, just look up and look around. There's a lot more to nature than you initially think it is. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.